Lisa Martinez opened her eyes to bright white light that made her head hurt badly. She tried to move, but her arms and legs felt heavy like they were made of stone. The air smelled strange and clean like a hospital, but different somehow. She blinked several times until her vision became clear enough to see where she was. The room around her was completely white with smooth walls that curved up to meet at the ceiling. There were no windows and only one door that she could see. Strange machines with blinking lights sat along the walls, making soft humming sounds. Tubes and wires connected to devices that looked nothing like any human technology she had ever seen before. Lisa tried to remember how she got here, but her thoughts felt fuzzy and mixed up. She remembered being on a mission with her Marine squad to check on the colony called New Bakersfield. They were supposed to make sure everything was running normally and report back to command. But something had gone wrong there. Something terrible that made her stomach feel sick just thinking about it. She reached up to touch her head where the pain was worst. Her fingers found small round metal things stuck to her skull in several places. They felt warm and seemed to pulse with tiny electrical signals. Lisa tried to pull one off, but it was attached too firmly to her skin. The attempt made sharp pain shoot through her brain. Footsteps echoed from somewhere outside the room. Lisa quickly lay back down and closed, her eyes pretending to still be unconscious. She had learned in Marine training that sometimes the best weapon was letting your enemy think. You were helpless when you were actually planning your next move. The door opened with a soft hissing sound. Someone walked into the room with steps. That sounded different from human walking. The footsteps were lighter and made small clicking noises like claws on hard floor. Lisa kept her breathing slow and steady while listening carefully to everything happening around her. A voice spoke, but not in any language she recognized. It sounded like musical notes mixed with whispers and clicking sounds. After a moment, another voice answered in the same strange language. Lisa could tell there were at least two of them in the room with her now. Something cold touched her forehead, and she had to fight hard not to react. A device beeped several times, and one of the creatures made what sounded like a satisfied noise. They spoke to each other again in their musical language for several minutes. Lisa heard them moving around the room, checking different machines and devices. She tried to remember more about what happened on New Bakersfield, but the memories came in broken pieces that did not fit together properly. She remembered finding buildings that were not supposed to be there. She remembered her squad leader Jake pointing at strange equipment and saying it was not human-made. She remembered feeling scared when they realized they had discovered something they were not meant to see. The creatures left the room, and Lisa waited several more minutes before opening her eyes again. She sat up slowly and looked around more carefully this time. The machines were definitely not human technology. Everything had curves and flowing lines instead of the straight edges and corners that humans usually made. The metal was a strange, blue-gray color that seemed to shift and change when she looked at it from different angles. Lisa stood up carefully, testing her balance. Her legs felt weak, but they held her weight. She walked to the nearest machine and studied it closely. There were symbols on it that looked like twisted letters mixed with mathematical equations. Some of the symbols seemed to move and change as she watched them. She moved to the door and examined it, but could not find any handle or button to open it. The surface was smooth and gave no clue about how it worked. Lisa pressed her hands against it and pushed, but nothing happened. She tried running her fingers along the edges, looking for hidden switches, but found nothing. Going back to the machines, Lisa looked for anything that might help her understand where she was and what had happened to her. One device had a screen that showed what looked like brain scans. The images were definitely human brains, but they had been changed somehow. Areas that should have been one color were different colors, and there were new connections between parts that should not be connected. Lisa realized with growing horror that the brain scans were probably of her own head. The creatures had done something to her brain while she was unconscious. The metal devices attached to her skull were probably part of whatever procedure they had performed on her. She tried again to remember what happened on New Bakersfield. This time, more memories came back to her. She remembered finding underground laboratories hidden beneath what looked like normal colony buildings. She remembered seeing humans in glass containers connected to machines very similar to the ones in this room. She remembered her squad trying to record evidence of what they found. Then she remembered the attack. Creatures that looked almost human but not quite right had surrounded them. They moved too fast and their eyes were too large and completely black. They had weapons that fired bolts of blue energy instead of bullets. Lisa remembered Jake falling down when one of the energy bolts hit him. She remembered Carlos screaming and then everything went dark. Now she was here in this white room with machines attached to her head. The creatures had captured her and brought her to this place. They had done something to her brain, but she could still remember what she had seen. She could still remember the laboratories and the humans in the containers and the proof that something terrible was happening on the outer colonies. Lisa sat down on the bed and tried to think clearly about her situation. She was a prisoner of some alien species that had technology far beyond anything humans possessed. They had performed some kind of brain surgery on her, but whatever they tried to do had not worked completely. She could still remember things they probably wanted her to forget. The question now was what to do next. She needed to find a way out of this room and off this ship or station or wherever she was. She needed to find out what happened to the rest of her squad. Most importantly, she needed to get back to human space and report what she had discovered. Lisa looked at the machines around her with new eyes. Instead of seeing alien technology she could not understand, she began to see tools she might be able to use. The creatures had made a mistake by leaving her alone with their equipment. They probably thought their brain procedure had worked, and she was no longer a threat. They were about to learn how wrong they were about that. Lisa spent 3 days pretending to be a confused and helpless victim while she watched and learned everything she could about her captors. The creatures called themselves Veil-3, and they believed their brain procedure had worked perfectly on her. They thought she could not remember anything about New Bakersfield or what her squad had discovered there. Dr. Kale Vorthak was the lead scientist who came to check on her every day. He was tall and thin with pale blue skin and those large black eyes that all Veil-3 seemed to have. When he spoke to her in broken human language, she acted confused and scared. She asked questions like, "Where am I and what happened to me?" in a weak voice that made him believe she was harmless. But while she pretended to be broken, Lisa was actually learning how the Veil-3 technology worked. She watched how Vorthak opened doors by placing his hand on certain spots. She memorized the patterns of symbols on the machines and figured out which ones controlled different functions. Most importantly, she discovered that the neural implants in her head were not just monitoring her brain, but also connected to the ship computer systems. The connection worked both ways. The Veil-3 could send information to her brain, but her brain could also send information back to their systems. Lisa found that when she concentrated hard on certain thoughts, she could access data files and security protocols. The aliens had not expected a human brain to be able to interface with their technology in reverse. On the 4th day, Lisa made her move. She waited until the night cycle when most of the Veil-3 were sleeping. Using her neural connection, she accessed the door controls and opened her cell. The corridor outside was dimly lit and empty except for the soft humming of the ship systems. Lisa moved carefully through the corridors, following a mental map she had built from accessing the ship computer. She needed to find the other human prisoners she knew were somewhere on this vessel. The ship was much larger than she had expected, with multiple levels and hundreds of rooms. She found the detention area 2 levels down from her cell. There were dozens of rooms just like hers, each containing a human prisoner. Most of them were unconscious and connected to the same kind of neural machinery that had been used on her. Lisa felt sick seeing so many of her own kind being used as test subjects by these aliens. In the 3rd room, she checked. Lisa found Jake Sullivan awake and alert. He was an engineer from the mining colony at Titanrest, and his eyes went wide when he saw her. She quickly put her finger to her lips to signal for quiet, then worked on opening his cell door. Jake whispered that he had been awake for 2 days, but was pretending to be unconscious. The Veil-3 brain procedure had not worked properly on him either. He still remembered everything about how they had captured him from his colony and brought him here for experiments. 2 rooms down they found Amy Chun, who was a communications specialist from Harvest Moon Colony. She was also awake and had been faking the effects of memory loss. Her neural implants had malfunctioned during the procedure, leaving her with access to Val3 communication networks instead of wiping her memories. The 4th conscious human they found was Carlos Rodriguez. Lisa felt relief seeing her old squad mate alive. Carlos was a Marine sergeant, and the Val3 procedure had only partially worked on him. He could remember some things clearly, but other memories were fuzzy or missing completely. Lisa quickly explained her plan to the others. They needed to get off this ship and return to human space to warn everyone about what the Val3 were doing. Amy had discovered through the communication networks that this was not just one ship, but an entire fleet conducting experiments on humans throughout the outer colonies. Jake knew about Val3 technology from studying their equipment during his captivity. He told Lisa that their ships used a form of faster-than-light travel that human science could not duplicate. But he thought he might be able to figure out how to operate a small scout ship if they could get to the docking bays. Amy shared the most disturbing information. Through the Val3 communications, she had learned that the experiments were not random. The aliens had a specific plan they called the Integration Protocol. They were testing different methods of neural control on humans to find the most effective way to take over human minds completely. The goal was not to kill humans, but to turn them into controlled servants. The Val3 saw humans as useful because they were adaptable and could survive in many different environments. But they wanted to eliminate human free will and independence. The experiments on the outer colonies were just preparation for a much larger operation targeting all human worlds, including Earth. Carlos added that he had overheard guards talking about human agents already working within Earth government and military. Some humans had been successfully programmed and sent back to infiltrate important positions. The Val3 had been planning this for years and were much closer to their goal than anyone realized. Lisa felt anger building inside her as she listened to what her companions had learned. The Val3 thought they could treat humans like laboratory animals. They thought they could steal human minds and turn people into slaves. They had made a serious mistake in underestimating what humans would do when threatened. The group moved carefully through the ship toward the docking areas. Lisa used her neural connection to monitor security systems and disable alarms. Amy tapped into communication channels to track guard movements. Jake studied ship schematics to find the best route to their destination. They encountered 3 Val3 guards along the way. Lisa discovered that her enhanced neural abilities gave her faster reflexes and better coordination than normal. She and Carlos were able to overpower the guards quickly and quietly. The Val3 were physically weaker than humans and did not expect prisoners to fight back effectively. At the docking bay, they found a small scout ship that Jake thought he could operate. The Val3 had been careless about security because they believed all human prisoners were safely unconscious and memory wiped. Jake worked frantically to understand the alien control systems while Amy monitored for approaching guards. Lisa stood watch while Carlos helped Jake figure out the ship controls. She thought about everything they had learned and what it meant for humanity. The Val3 were not just another alien species making contact with humans. They were predators who saw humans as prey to be captured and controlled, but they had made a critical error. They assumed that human minds worked like their own minds. They thought that breaking human memories would break human spirit. They did not understand that humans became more dangerous when threatened, not less dangerous. Jake got the scout ship powered up and ready for departure. The group climbed aboard and strapped themselves in for what Jake warned would be a rough ride. He had never flown a Val3 ship before and was not sure he could control it properly. As they lifted off from the docking bay, alarms finally began sounding throughout the ship. Amy reported that Val3 guards were rushing toward their location, but they were already moving too fast to be stopped. Jake pushed the alien engines to maximum power and aimed for the edge of the system. Lisa watched the Val3 ship shrinking behind them and made a promise to herself. She would not just escape and report what she had learned. She would find a way to make the Veil-3 pay for what they had done to humans. They wanted to erase human memories and break human spirits. But instead they had created their worst enemy. The aliens were about to learn what happened when you tried to cage a species that refused to stay caged. The stolen Veil-3 scout ship limped into Olympus Base 3 weeks after their escape with engines failing and life support systems barely working. Lisa had pushed Jake to keep flying even when he warned that the alien technology was breaking down. She knew they needed to reach someone they could trust before the ship gave out completely. Commander Kate Morrison met them at the docking bay with her security team weapons drawn. Kate had been Lisa's friend since their academy days, but she looked suspicious and wary as the 4 escapees stumbled out of the damaged alien vessel. Lisa did not blame her for being careful. Their story was going to sound impossible to anyone who had not lived through it. Kate listened without interruption as Lisa explained everything they had discovered about the Veil-3 experiments and the integration protocol. Amy showed her the alien communication equipment they had salvaged and demonstrated how it could intercept Veil-3 transmissions. Jake presented technical analysis of the neural control devices and how they were designed to break human resistance. The proof that finally convinced Kate was when Amy used the Veil-3 equipment to detect a hidden transmission coming from Olympus Base itself. Someone on the mining station was secretly communicating with Veil-3 forces using encrypted alien protocols. Kate realized with horror that the infiltration was already happening even in remote locations like her base. They tracked the transmission to Chief Administrator Bob Turner, who had been acting strange for the past several months. When Kate confronted him, Turner suddenly tried to attack her with inhuman speed and strength. It took 4 security guards to restrain him while Lisa used a modified Veil-3 device to scan his brain patterns. The scan showed that Turner's neural pathways had been artificially altered just like the test subjects they had seen on the alien ship. He had been programmed to gather intelligence and report back to Veil-3 handlers. Lisa realized that if the aliens had agents even at isolated mining stations, then the infiltration was far more widespread than they had imagined. Kate agreed to help. Lisa built a resistance network but warned that they would have to be extremely careful about who they trusted. They could not use normal communication channels because the Veil-3 were probably monitoring all human transmissions. They could not contact Earth government or military because alien agents might already be in key positions there. Lisa spent the next 6 months carefully recruiting people she could verify were not compromised. She focused on individuals from isolated communities who had been away from major population centers where Veil-3 infiltration was most likely. She looked for veterans and colonists with psychological profiles that showed strong independence and resistance to authority. Jake worked with Kate engineering team to reverse engineer the Veil-3 technology they had captured. He discovered that the alien neural devices could be modified to detect and block the control signals used to program human agents. More importantly, he found ways to improve human weapons and equipment using alien innovations. Amy built a secret communication network that used modified mining equipment to send encrypted messages between resistance cells. She created a system that looked like normal industrial communications but actually carried intelligence reports and coordination signals. The network grew slowly but steadily as more people learned the truth about the Veil-3 threat. Carlos trained small teams of fighters using tactics designed specifically for fighting Veil-3 forces. He had learned during their escape that the aliens were physically weaker than humans but relied on superior technology and the element of surprise. His training focused on close combat techniques that neutralized those advantages. Lisa discovered that her enhanced neural abilities made her extremely good at identifying compromised humans. She could spot the subtle behavioral changes that indicated Veil-3 programming. She developed simple tests that exploited the limitations of alien mind control to reveal hidden agents. The Resistance scored its first major victory when they raided a hidden Veil-3 facility on the agricultural world Green Valley. Lisa had identified the location by tracking unusual supply shipments and communication patterns. The facility contained dozens of human test subjects and critical intelligence about alien operations. Dr. Helen Park was one of the rescued scientists from Green Valley. She was a neuroscientist who had been studying the effects of Veil-3 neural manipulation before being captured herself. Helen brought crucial knowledge about how the alien brain control technology actually worked at the biological level. Helen explained that the Veil-3 had completely misunderstood human brain structure. They assumed that all intelligent species had rigid neural pathways like their own. Human brains were far more flexible and adaptive, which caused unexpected reactions to their control methods. This was why some subjects like Lisa developed enhanced abilities instead of losing their memories. More importantly, Helen discovered that the process could be reversed and weaponized. By understanding how Veil-3 neural control affected human brain chemistry, they could develop devices that would overload alien nervous systems. The rigid mental structure that made Veil-3 technology possible also made them vulnerable to certain types of neural feedback. Lisa authorized Helen to begin developing neural weapons while she expanded recruitment for the resistance. Each successful raid brought more people and more intelligence about the scope of the alien infiltration. They learned that the Veil-3 had been operating on human worlds for over 20 years, building their network of agents and test facilities. The aliens were preparing for something they called final integration, which would involve simultaneous neural control operations on all major human worlds. Earth military and government leaders who had been secretly programmed would cooperate with the invasion. Most humans would be enslaved rather than killed because the Veil-3 needed workers for their expanding empire. Lisa realized that conventional military resistance would not be enough to stop the integration protocol. The aliens had too much advanced technology and too many human agents in key positions. She needed to completely destroy their ability to wage this kind of war, which meant targeting their home systems and their entire species. Kate worried that Lisa was becoming too focused on revenge rather than just stopping the immediate threat. But Lisa had seen what the Veil-3 did to human test subjects. She had lived through their attempts to break her mind and steal her memories. She knew that an enemy this ruthless would never stop trying to enslave humanity. Amy intercepted communications indicating that the Veil-3 leadership was finally beginning to take the resistance seriously. They were sending more ships and troops to hunt down what they called the failed subject and her followers. The aliens still did not understand that they were not facing one rogue human but a growing movement that represented everything they had tried to destroy about human nature. Jake completed development of portable neural disruptors that could be used in combat against Veil-3 forces. The weapons worked by broadcasting specifically tuned brainwave patterns that caused severe disorientation in alien personnel. Field tests showed that a single device could disable an entire Veil-3 squad within seconds. Helen made an even more important breakthrough when she figured out how to use captured alien communication equipment to trace signals back to their sources. This gave the Resistance the ability to locate hidden Veil-3 bases and ships throughout human space. They could finally go on the offensive instead of just reacting to alien operations. Lisa stood in the command center at Olympus Base looking at star charts that showed confirmed Veil-3 positions throughout the outer colonies. Red markers indicated alien facilities that needed to be destroyed. Blue markers showed resistance cells that were ready for coordinated action. Green markers represented liberated worlds where the alien presence had been eliminated. The network she had built over the past 2 years was finally ready for large-scale operations. They had the weapons technology people and intelligence needed to strike back effectively against their enemies. But Lisa knew that winning battles against individual Veil-3 forces would not be enough to protect humanity in the long term. She was already planning for the final phase of the war, the phase where she would take the fight directly to the alien homeworlds and make sure that the Veil-3 could never threaten any human ever again. They had tried to break her spirit and steal her memories, but instead they had created the instrument of their own destruction. 2 years after her escape from the Veil-3 ship, Lisa commanded a resistance force that spanned 47 colony worlds and included over 10,000 active fighters. Her network had successfully identified and neutralized hundreds of alien agents while liberating dozens of hidden test facilities. But the war was about to enter a much more dangerous phase. Amy intercepted urgent Veil 3 communications indicating that the aliens were abandoning their gradual infiltration plan. Earth government officials who had been secretly programmed were preparing to announce humanity's surrender to what they would claim was a peaceful alien contact. The final integration would begin within months rather than the years the Resistance had expected. Lisa called an emergency meeting of her senior commanders at the hidden base they had established in the abandoned mining complex on Titan 7. Kate Morrison had brought her most experienced military officers. Carlos Rodriguez reported that his special assault teams were ready for large-scale operations. Dr. Helen Park presented the latest neural weapons that could disable entire Veil 3 ships. The meeting was interrupted when Commander Ray Peterson of the Earth Defense Force arrived with a small fleet of loyal military vessels. Peterson had discovered the alien infiltration when several of his senior staff had tried to sabotage defense preparations without any logical explanation. His investigation had led him to evidence of the Veil 3 conspiracy and eventually to Lisa Resistance Network. Peterson brought disturbing news from Earth. The alien agents in government and military leadership were moving faster than expected. They had already begun disabling orbital defense systems and redirecting fleet deployments away from strategic positions. Within weeks, Earth would be defenseless against Veil 3 invasion forces that were massing just outside the solar system. Lisa realized that the time for hidden operations and gradual resistance was over. The aliens were forcing a direct confrontation. That would determine whether humanity remained free or became a slave species. She authorized Peterson to coordinate with resistance cells throughout human space for simultaneous strikes against all known Veil 3 positions. The first major battle took place above the colony world New Boston, where a Veil 3 fleet attempted to deploy neural control satellites that would enslave the entire population. Lisa personally led the attack using ships equipped with Jake advanced weapon systems and Helen neural disruptors. The aliens were completely unprepared for the effectiveness of human neural warfare technology. Their ship's computer systems crashed when exposed to the chaotic brainwave patterns that Helen had learned to weaponize. Veil 3 crew members suffered mental breakdowns that left them unable to function. The entire enemy fleet was destroyed or captured within hours. Similar victories occurred throughout human space as resistance forces struck at alien operations with coordinated precision. Years of careful intelligence gathering and technology development had given Lisa Network devastating advantages over enemies who still thought they were fighting primitive humans with inferior weapons, but the Veil 3 response was swift and brutal. Unable to understand how humans had developed effective countermeasures to their neural technology, the aliens decided that total extermination was preferable to risking further defeats. They began preparing orbital bombardment platforms that would sterilize all human worlds regardless of the cost. Amy discovered the extermination plan when she intercepted communications between Veil 3 commanders and their home fleet. The aliens were bringing massive weapons platforms capable of destroying entire planets from space. They had decided that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to survive in any form. Lisa felt cold anger when she learned about the alien decision to commit genocide rather than accept defeat. The Veil 3 had revealed their true nature as a species that would rather destroy other races than coexist with them. They had made the choice that would determine their own fate. Jake technical teams achieved a breakthrough when they successfully reverse-engineered Veil 3 faster than light drive technology. More importantly, they discovered that alien ships had a critical vulnerability in their neural integration systems. The same technology that made Veil 3 vessels so advanced also made them susceptible to properly designed human psychological warfare. Dr. Helen Park developed what she called ghost protocols, which were specific combinations of human emotions and thought patterns that could be transmitted through Veil 3 communication networks. Fear, rage, hope, and determination, when properly amplified and broadcast, would cause cascade failures in alien neural systems, both biological and technological. Lisa began training special units that she named Ghost Squads to infiltrate Velthri vessels and installations. These teams used modified neural interface equipment to connect directly with alien systems and broadcast the ghost protocols that would destroy enemy capabilities from within. The first Ghost Squad mission targeted a major Velthri command ship near the Jupiter system. Lisa led the infiltration personally, using captured alien equipment to disguise her team approach. Once aboard, they connected their neural interfaces to the ship main computer and began broadcasting amplified human emotional patterns. The effect exceeded even Helen optimistic predictions. The Velthri crew suffered immediate psychological collapse as their rigid mental structures were overwhelmed by chaotic human emotions. The ship computer systems crashed and began destroying themselves in feedback loops. Within minutes, the entire vessel was dead in space with no survivors. Lisa realized that she had found the weapon that could end the war permanently. The same neural rigidity that made Velthri technology possible also made them completely vulnerable to the kind of psychological chaos that humans took for granted. Their greatest strength had become their fatal weakness. Kate Morrison expressed concern that Lisa was becoming too focused on total victory rather than just stopping the immediate threat. She worried that the neural weapons they were developing might be too powerful and too dangerous to use on a large scale. Helen Park shared similar concerns about the psychological effects on human operators who used the ghost protocols, but Lisa had seen the Velthri extermination plans. She knew that the aliens would never stop trying to destroy humanity as long as they existed as a species. Half measures and defensive strategies would only delay the inevitable. The only way to protect humanity permanently was to eliminate the threat completely. Carlos reported that his assault teams were ready for large-scale operations against Velthri home systems. Amy had mapped the locations of major alien worlds and installations throughout the galaxy. Jake had converted captured enemy ships into delivery systems for the neural weapons that could destroy entire civilizations. Peterson coordinated with remaining loyal Earth forces to hold defensive positions while Lisa prepared for the final offensive. The Velthri bombardment platforms were already moving toward human systems and would arrive within weeks. There was no time for gradual campaigns or limited strikes. Lisa stood in the command center looking at tactical displays that showed Velthri forces throughout the galaxy. The red markers representing enemy positions seemed to cover half the known stars. But she no longer saw an overwhelming threat that humanity could barely survive. She saw targets. The aliens had made the mistake of revealing their true intentions when they chose genocide over coexistence. They had shown that they were not just conquerors who could potentially be negotiated with or contained. They were predators who would never stop hunting humanity as long as they existed. Lisa had learned from her time in Velthri captivity that some enemies could not be reasoned with or reformed. They could only be destroyed so completely that they would never threaten anyone again. The aliens had tried to break her mind and steal her memories, but instead they had created exactly the kind of enemy they should have feared most, a human being who had learned to turn her greatest strengths into weapons and who understood that sometimes survival required the complete destruction of those who threatened everything she cared about. The Velthri were about to discover what happened when they taught a human to hate them with perfect clarity and unlimited determination. Lisa received the final intelligence reports from Amy Network with grim satisfaction. The Velthri extermination fleet was 3 weeks away from Earth and carried enough firepower to sterilize every human world in the galaxy. The aliens had committed their entire military force to what they called the final solution for the human problem. They would leave no survivors this time. Dr. Helen Park completed construction of the massive neural warfare devices that would be deployed directly to Velthri home systems. These weapons were 1,000 times more powerful than the ghost protocols used against individual ships. They would broadcast amplified human emotional patterns through entire Planetary communication networks simultaneously destroying alien technology and population centers. Jake Sullivan had converted 12 captured Veil-3 vessels into delivery systems for the neural weapons. The ships were operated by volunteer crews who understood they would not survive the mission. The neural devices would overload every electronic system within light years of their activation, including the ships that carried them. Commander Kate Morrison argued one final time that total genocide was not necessary to protect humanity. She believed that destroying the Veil-3 military and government would be sufficient to end the threat. But Lisa had studied alien psychology extensively during her years of captivity and resistance. She knew that Veil-3 culture was fundamentally incapable of accepting defeat or coexistence with species they considered inferior. Carlos Rodriguez led the main diversionary attack against Veil-3 military installations throughout the Outer Rim. His forces engaged enemy fleets in dozens of star systems, drawing their attention away from the real targets. The aliens responded exactly as Lisa had predicted by committing their reserve forces to stop what they thought was humanity's desperate last stand. Commander Ray Peterson coordinated Earth defenses against the approaching extermination fleet. His ships were equipped with every neural weapon and technological advantage the Resistance had developed. But everyone understood that the defensive battle was ultimately hopeless against the overwhelming alien firepower. Victory would depend entirely on Lisa offensive operations. Amy Chun remained at the main command base monitoring Veil-3 communications and coordinating intelligence for the assault teams. She had mapped every major alien installation in the galaxy and identified the critical targets that would cripple their entire civilization. The key was striking all targets simultaneously before the enemy could adapt to the new threat. Lisa personally led the assault on Keth Maran, the Veil-3 homeworld that contained their central government and primary research facilities. Her Ghost Squad had trained for months to infiltrate the planet's massive communication network and deploy the neural weapon at the planetary control center. The approach to Keth Maran was more difficult than any previous mission. The planet was protected by orbital defense platforms and patrol fleets that could destroy entire human armadas. But Lisa team used captured alien ships and false identification codes to penetrate the defensive perimeter without triggering alarms. Landing on the planet's surface, Lisa was struck by the alien beauty of Veil-3 architecture. Their cities were built from flowing curves and crystalline structures that seemed to grow from the ground like living things. Millions of aliens moved through the streets in perfect coordination as if they were parts of a single organism rather than individuals. The sight reminded Lisa why the neural weapons would be so effective against Veil-3 civilization. Their entire society was based on neural connections and shared consciousness that eliminated chaos and unpredictability. Human emotional patterns would be like poison injected directly into their collective mind. Lisa team moved through the underground tunnels that connected all major buildings on Keth Maran. The aliens had built their infrastructure assuming that no enemy could ever reach their homeworld. Security was minimal and focused on preventing accidents rather than stopping infiltrators. They reached the planetary communication center without encountering any guards. The facility was a massive chamber filled with crystalline towers that pulsed with information flowing between Keth Maran and every other Veil-3 world. Lisa could feel the neural signals pressing against her enhanced consciousness like whispers in an alien language. Jake activated the neural weapon while Amy coordinated with assault teams on other worlds. The device began broadcasting human emotional patterns through the planetary network at amplification levels that would have killed any human operator. But Lisa team was protected by neural shielding that Jake had developed specifically for this mission. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Throughout Keth Maran, the crystalline communication towers began overloading and exploding as they tried to process chaotic human emotions. Veil-3 citizens collapsed in the streets as their rigid mental structures shattered under the assault of feelings they had never been designed to experience. Lisa watched through the facility monitors. As alien cities began shutting down, transportation systems crashed when their neural guidance networks failed. Power generation stopped as control systems destroyed themselves. Most importantly, the collective consciousness that bound Vel-3 society together dissolved into madness. And confusion. Reports from other assault teams confirmed similar results on every major alien world. The neural weapons were working exactly as Helen had predicted. Vel-3 technology was failing because it depended on neural integration that could not handle human psychological patterns. Their population was suffering complete mental breakdown as rigid alien minds encountered the emotional chaos that humans lived with every day. Within hours, Vel-3 civilization ceased to function. Their faster-than-light communication network collapsed, cutting off contact between star systems. Their military fleet stopped responding to orders as command structures disintegrated. Their research facilities shut down as the collective knowledge stored in neural databases became corrupted and unusable. Lisa stood in the ruins of the Keth Moran Communication Center watching alien towers crumble as neural feedback destroyed their crystalline structures. Emergency lighting flickered and died as the planet power grid failed completely. In the distance, she could see fires burning in the alien cities as their perfect society collapsed into chaos. The mission reports came in steadily over the next several days. Every major Vel-3 world had suffered the same fate as their homeworld. Their technology was destroyed, their population was in catatonic shock, and their entire civilization had effectively ceased to exist. The species that had tried to enslave humanity had been completely eradicated. Amy confirmed that all Vel-3 communication networks throughout the galaxy had gone silent. Jake reported that their faster-than-light travel technology had failed. When the neural systems that controlled it were destroyed, Carlos sent word that the alien extermination fleet had stopped moving toward Earth and was now drifting powerless in space. Lisa walked through the empty streets of the Vel-3 capital city, seeing the results of her decision to choose total victory over mercy. Alien bodies lay everywhere, but they were not dead in the traditional sense. Their minds had simply been broken beyond any possibility of repair. They stared at nothing with empty eyes that would never again show intelligence or awareness. Helen Park expressed horror at the scope of destruction when she saw the reports from all targeted worlds. She had designed the neural weapons to disable Vel-3 military capabilities, not to destroy their entire species. But Lisa had ordered maximum power settings because she knew that anything less would eventually allow the aliens to recover and threaten humanity again. Kate Morrison arrived at Keth Moran 3 weeks later with a fleet of human ships to assess the aftermath of the operation. She found Lisa standing alone in what had been the Vel-3 Planetary Government Center. The alien leaders were still alive, but their minds were completely gone. They sat motionless in their crystalline chairs like statues of a vanished civilization. Kate asked Lisa if she felt any regret about what she had done to an entire species. Lisa looked at the catatonic aliens and remembered her time in their laboratory when they had tried to break her mind and steal her memories. She remembered the human test subjects she had seen in glass containers and the integration protocol that would have enslaved every person on Earth. Lisa told Kate that she felt no regret about destroying enemies who had chosen genocide over coexistence. The Vel-3 had revealed their true nature when they decided to exterminate humanity rather than accept defeat. They had made the choice that determined their fate, and she had simply carried out the logical consequences of that choice. Over the following months, human teams systematically explored abandoned Vel-3 worlds and installations. They recovered vast amounts of alien technology and scientific knowledge that would advance human civilization by centuries. But more importantly, they confirmed that the threat had been eliminated completely and permanently. Jake led the teams that dismantled Vel-3 faster than light drives and communication equipment. The alien technology was incredibly advanced, but it was all designed around neural integration systems that no longer functioned. Without their collective consciousness and shared knowledge networks, the surviving aliens were unable to maintain or repair anything.